My father was right. I couldn't continue living in the same house as him and his new family, but not for the reasons he thought. I did not want to leave that place, which was once my home, because of my problems with his new wife, but because of the temptation that that lady's daughter represented. A pretty girl, with brown skin, eyes as clear as a cat's, and an equally feline smile. But let's go in parts. My name is Abraham. I am 28 years old, and I am the only son of Jesus, a 75-year-old man who found love again in a woman who had recently separated. Her name was Eva, and I have to say that for being 55 years old, she had looked as if she were still in her 20s. At first, Eva and I remained cordial. She would come to our house, greet me, and pretend to be interested in my activities, which, at that time, were due to university. However, after my graduation, Dad gave me the great news that he had formalized everything with his girlfriend and that they would be getting married soon. At that time, I had no objection to it, and even if I did, I couldn't imagine throwing a tantrum at my father to prevent him from getting married. Both he and I were already adults, ones who, although we advised each other, never interfered in each other's decisions. Anyway, I was genuinely happy for Jesus, so there was nothing to talk about. But then it happened. Eva finally moved into our house, becoming the new mistress of it and imposing her rules. There she began to show her claws, something she hadn't had the courage to do when she was dating my dad. Among the things he complained about was the fact that she didn't like the food we bought. She didn't agree with the decor, and she even tried to impose his aesthetic on my own room. She also didn't believe that we should have lazy nights, ones where we watched football while ordering food at home and forgetting about the problems we were having at the moment. A year had passed since that moment, and with each passing day, I couldn't be more excited to find my own space. My home had become a place without color, since earth tones prevailed in the decoration that Eva thought was most appropriate. We only ate how and when she wanted, with the ingredients she said, and the way she prepared it. The nights of soccer and pizza, hamburgers, or hot dogs were over, transforming into evenings of romantic comedy marathons, always Eva's favorites. My father was also unrecognizable. He, who was a passionate man and loved rock music, had started listening to ballads. I felt lost, since the only thing I didn't expect Eva to change in me was precisely Jesus. At that point I felt like there was nothing worse than that, but I was wrong. It was when I saw 2-kilometer legs enter the door of my house and smile with false happiness that I knew there would be more problems. "This is Abby, my daughter," Eva said, introducing her to me. I couldn't do anything but look at the situation in disbelief, especially at my father, who seemed to be ashamed of what was happening. When did Eva have a daughter? Because I did not know? And what was she doing here? These were the questions that assaulted me at that moment. However, the answer came from her. As a summary, Abby's father had suffered a serious car accident that had taken away his ability to walk again. There I found out that precisely, that had been the reason why both had separated, and the reason why Eva never mentioned her, since her daughter was angry with her mother for having turned her back on the family in the past on the worst moment. They had recently reconciled, at the same time that his father's family had decided to take him to a hospital home that would meet all the needs he had. That way, Abby could rebuild her life by returning to university, one that she had left to dedicate herself to taking care of her father. I did not want, nor should I, give my opinion regarding the story they had told. However, I had to admit that this left me uneasy, because I could already guess what awaited my father if something happened to him. In the end, he was right. I was the only thing he had left. Still, I decided to welcome Abby, since I didn't want to be predisposed to her, just because she was Eva's daughter. The point is that, indeed, her presence did not make my life easier. Quite the opposite. It was a few days later, after hearing Eva complain that her daughter had back pain, that I decided to stay and listen to a private conversation. "Love, don't you think it's unfair?" I heard Eva say to my father. "There is only one room, and that must be Abby's." "But that has always been Abraham's room," my father responded. I clenched my fists. I knew what I was doing was wrong. I shouldn't spy on my father's conversations with his wife, but she wasn't being fair to me either. But she is a woman. She needs more privacy, more space. Eva, I can't kick my own son out of his room. He is already an adult man, Jesus, has 28 years old. What's wrong with that? Don't you think it's a loss that he continues to live with you? I snorted, since I didn't understand what that comment was about, considering that his own daughter was 26 and had also moved back in with her. At that moment, I wanted to break down the door and go in to make Ava see that no one should mess with my personal space. But all that moment stopped when I felt a weight on my back. There were only 4 people in that house. 2 were talking in front of me, and I was the third. The fact that Abby, the 4th, was hugging me made me feel a chill running through my entire body. "I don't mind sharing," she told me in a whisper, while his hands hugged my torso. I shook her off quickly, turning to look at her. At that moment I felt furious, since because of she they wanted to remove me from the place that had been mine since I was little. However, her sad, crestfallen look activated something in me that made me feel guilty for being so angry with her. "Or do you, brother?" I swallowed thickly. That voice had sounded sweet, breaking each of the walls that had been placed between the 2 of them. Suddenly all the anger he had had melted away, replacing it with a need for complacency. It was as if he were bewitched, completely bewitched by her. But the conversation seemed to have come to an end, so it was time to run away so we wouldn't get caught. "See you," she said. However, when I turned around, I realized that he had completely and absolutely lost his sanity. Abby not only had a face to die for, but she was also tall, with curves so dangerous that anyone could have an accident there. That night, I went to bed in my room to try to sleep, but I couldn't really sleep the whole night. I was just thinking about the way Abby had seen and spoken to me, and how good she looked in those short pajama shorts and tight t-shirt. That was just the beginning of my torture, as the following weeks were spent between passive-aggressive comments from Eva and innocent looks and revealing outfits from Abby. I didn't know which was worse, being kicked out by the mother or being tempted by the daughter. But there was a day when I couldn't take it anymore, especially since it was my father who started the conversation. "I think it's better that you go with your mother," he told me. "Are you serious, Dad?" I asked, still incredulous. "At least for a while," he added. "All while I figure out how to fix this problem. Maybe we could move to a bigger house." "No need," I told him. "Tomorrow I'm moving to an apartment." Of course, I didn't dislike the idea of moving, since what I was looking forward to finding my own space. But there was something about that situation that didn't sit right with me, as it didn't feel like my personal decision to leave my home, but rather like someone who had been kicked out of their own home. Finally, Abby took my room, and I slept in the living room for the first time since I could remember. The furniture was not uncomfortable, but my bed was 3 times as big as this one, which left me little room to move. At that point, I thought it was unfair that my last night at home ended with monumental back pain, but then something happened. "Abraham," a voice whispered in the darkness. For a moment I was scared, thinking that there was something paranormal happening, even though I wasn't a big believer in those things. However, Abby's face appeared in the darkness, causing my heart rate to not completely stabilize. She was wearing very short pajamas that clung to her body, while her long, straight hair fell over her chest. She was so beautiful and so tempting, like candy to the hungry, that I felt my heart wanting to jump out of my body, keeping me rigid in place. But she had other plans. "Can you please come?" "Where?" I asked, confused. Then she pointed to the room. Without thinking, I stood up, alert and waiting to solve any of their problems. That attitude took me by surprise again, but I couldn't help it. "Why? Something happened?" "Yes," she said, nodding. "There is something I must show you there." I nodded, heading with her to my room. When I entered, I could see the light on my nightstand on. At the same time, she closed the door and locked it. I didn't know why I needed that, but I didn't ask anything. Anyway, I didn't have time to do it. I felt so confused, but at the same time, I didn't want to say a word. I just wanted to watch Abby, who had transformed into a complete seductress, who danced with the air, moving her hips. Once again, I felt hypnotized, unable to do anything but see her. But, as I said, she wouldn't be satisfied with that. And that's how we both disappeared into my bed, doing the unimaginable while her mother and my father slept in the next room. I have no words to describe what it was like to be with Abby, but I can assure you that no woman had ever felt like her. His warmth was unique, her passion unmatched. I could only hug her there, in the middle of the night, while she clung to me and fell exhausted. The next morning, things had changed. I decided to talk to my dad and make a truce with him, assuring him that I was okay with sleeping on the couch while we found a new place where we both had our own room. However, deep down, I didn't want that to ever happen, since sleeping there, on that sofa that wasn't that big, had given me something I had never experienced in my life. I no longer wanted to leave, just to stay in the company of my stepsister, whom I had dedicated myself to saying goodnight to in my room. If you were in my place, would you have done the same? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video.